Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast, and we've got a loaded video for you today as we've got a former Texas Tech signee signing with Overtime Elite and following the coach that, had him committed to the Red Raiders. We'll also talk about two portal targets that are still in the NBA draft process and where they could potentially land, and the Red Raiders being involved in both. But before we do that, I got to ask you to do one thing and one thing only. Like the video. That's it. If you want more of these Texas Tech men's basketball videos daily, just hit that like button and let us know that you like them. I think I'm going to start breaking down some film of each individual player now that we've got some new software here on the channel. As you can tell by the graphics, not the greatest in the world, but a lot better than what we had, right? So I think I'm going to start doing that. If that's something y'all want to see, give that like button a smash. And hey, let's jump into today's video. So listen, Jason Jackson. We know the whole dilemma with him and everything like that. He has reclassified to the class of 2024 and actually gone to Overtime Elite. Okay, for those that don't know, Overtime Elite is basically the G League and everything like that for high school kids and stuff like that, right? It allows them to still get paid, work on their classes, as well as work on their games out in Vegas. He is signed for them in 2023, but has committed to Ole Miss for the class of 2024. Why is that? Well, remember, who was the coach that he committed to at Texas Tech? Al Pinkins. Where is Al Pinkins now? You guessed it, Ole Miss. Overall, this move makes sense to me from the Jason Jackson perspective, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because, again, this isn't an Ole Miss video or anything, but it's an interesting move, and I'm curious to see if more guys do this moving forward. Overall, just wishing Jason the best of luck. He was one of my favorite players that Tech has recruited just because of his athleticism and everything like that. I don't think Texas Tech has had a guard like that in a while. So it was really fun to watch his tape, but wish nothing but the best for him. All right, let's jump into the portal news. Let's talk about really what's going on here today. At the time of this recording, it is Wednesday, May 31st. If you look at the bottom ticker below me, this is the last day to withdraw from the NBA draft and to return to school. Why is that important? Well, Texas Tech is in the pot for some of these guys that are going through this process. But before we get there, I want to really specify this and make sure that everyone understands what's going on here. So I'm going to look down at my notes and make sure I get this right. If players don't withdraw their names from the NBA draft tonight, May 31st, 2023, 11:59 p.m. Eastern time, they will stay in the draft. Now, if they do remove their name or withdraw their name, they are eligible to play next season, and some, depending on if they entered the portal prior to the deadline this past month, mid-May, will start their recruiting process to find a new school or have the opportunity to potentially return to their old one. Here are a couple names that have been linked to Texas Tech in this process. Let's go ahead and get one of the ones that is really interesting to me out of the way, and that's Tyron Lawrence. Again, he has already opted to return to school next year, and if we're being completely honest with you, I think at the time that I'm talking, I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't go back to Vanderbilt, okay? But Texas Tech is in the mix, and the reason being so, we've talked about him on this channel a couple times already, and it's Chokey, the assistant coach that taught him and was his coach up at Sunrise Christian Academy up in Kansas. Chokey is now an assistant coach for the Red Raiders. Texas Tech is probably the second most likely destination, only behind Vanderbilt. Now, again, if you ask me, where do you think Tyron Lawrence plays next year in college basketball, since he has withdrawn his name from the NBA draft? I'm probably saying Vanderbilt, right? That's probably where my money is. But nothing is official yet. Texas Tech is still in the mix, but we'll see how this one ends up. I feel like this is one that could end relatively soon, though, if we're being fully honest about it. Okay, so let's think about the next one. And we talked about this guy on Memorial Day, if you want to go listen to my scouting report on him on the channel, and it's Arthur Kaluma. He is still, at the time of this recording, in the draft process. If I had to be completely honest with you, I fully expect him to take his name out of the draft process by May 31st, 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. That's just what I think, right? I think he's going to be one of the more heavily recruited guys in the portal once this starts going, in terms of him withdrawing from the NBA draft and him going in and trying to set visits or whatever his process may be, right? I think Texas Tech is going to be in the mix for him. He's a Dallas kid, Irving more specifically. Then he went out and played high school ball in Arizona as well. He is a Texas kid, though, and I think Texas schools are going to be in heavy on him. I would not be surprised if you see maybe a TCU in the mix, maybe a Baylor if Bridges doesn't come back, maybe a Texas if Mitchell stays in the draft, right? You're going to have other Power 6 programs after him within the state of Texas, and I think Texas Tech will be one of those guys, right? I mentioned in the prior video, Texas Tech has reached out to him. They were one of the first schools that interacted with him and everything like that. And he's been linked to Texas Tech, not only because they've reached out, but he also has a relationship with Pop. So maybe that pays some dividends. Maybe it's nothing. A lot of these guys have relationships with guys across the country at different schools. But hey, maybe that Pop connection can pay dividends for the Red Raiders. Both are guys worth monitoring, though, in terms of the portal process. And if they do both withdraw, obviously Lawrence has withdrawn already from the NBA draft process and will return to college basketball. I expect Arthur Kaluma to do the same thing. But before we get into what the current roster looks like right now, again, giving you an update going into June, I want you to look at the bottom line right there, and you can only pick one. And let me know on the pinned comment below. Who do you want Texas Tech to land more? You can only pick one, Tyron Lawrence or Arthur Kaluma. Let me know. You can just put their initials down there below. You can put TL, AK, whichever one you want. Let me know on the pinned comment below. All right. Here is the roster as of May 31st. We're going into June. Classes start at Texas Tech about 6 days from now, okay? So that's when Summer 1 starts, and that's when you start really seeing these practices ramp up a little bit. You got Isaacs, obviously Pop. You got Lindsey Jennings, Kerwin Walton, Damarion Williams, Lamar Washington, Chance McMillan, Darion Williams, Warren Washington, Emeli Yalahu, and Drew Steffi. All of those players that I mentioned, all 11 are on scholarship. You have 2 scholarships remaining. Another guy that I mentioned that was linked to Texas Tech was a familiar face, Malik Wilson. Could he be potentially added to this roster, right? It's going to be interesting to see how this develops because, again, typically coaches want to have their coaching staff complete, and I think that we might hear some rumblings of that here in the next couple of days when it comes to Texas Tech because, again, you want to have your coaching staff and your roster damn near complete, if not complete, going into Summer 1 so you can get guys in classes, right, so they don't have to take as many in the fall and spring when it's really basketball focused, right? Also, you just want to build that camaraderie. You want to have everybody at practice. Simple and plain. It's that easy. You want to build those relationships with not only the coaches, but the players and vice versa, right? So you want to make sure that you have everything there in place to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and no one's really feeling like they're behind and joining the process late. So I'm very curious to see, again, the 2 names to look at are Tyron Lawrence and Arthur Kaluma when it comes to the NBA draft process. For Texas Tech, and I think Arthur Kaluma is more likely than Tyron Lawrence, who I think will end up back at Vanderbilt, but he has been linked to Texas Tech over this process. And again, Malik Wilson, I mentioned him on the video alongside Arthur Kaluma on Monday, if you want to go check that out on the channel in terms of giving those scouting reports and what I had heard there. But as it stands right now, still 2 scholarships remaining. You've got some coaching spots open as well, 3 to be exact. You've only got Grant, Matt, and AC Chokey on the coaching staff right now. How quick will that formulate, and how quick will the roster formulate and be completed by Summer 1, or will it not? And we may have questions going into the summer. There is a lot to consider. I am RC Maxfield reminding you, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech men's basketball all year long, right here on your one-stop shop for everything Texas Tech men's basketball. Of course, I'm talking about the Back to 12 podcast channel.